Right. So I am going to just introduce myself while people are coming and going a little bit. My name is John Bartucz. I live in Rochester, Minnesota, and it's a little smoky here today. So I've might be coughing a little bit, but we had a beautiful sunset. So, pluses and minuses. I teach IT and computer science at the Rochester C-Tech School here, which is a high school that students come and visit for block classes in many different areas. And I also am an adjunct at RCTC in Winona State, and I'm also currently doing my PhD in learning technologies and culture and STEM from the University of Minnesota. And I am also the president of CSTA Minnesota. So if you are not a member of your local CSTA chapter, I'd highly recommend it. There's lots of great PD sessions like this, and definitely worthwhile checking out. The basic membership is free. So, all right, so hopefully enough people have joined. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Hi, everyone. Hi, John. Enzo here from Coding Rooms. I'm sorry I was away for the past 2 minutes, but if you haven't had a chance to click onto our entry poll, please feel free to take 15 seconds to fill that out for us, and then that will enroll you into our PD certificate list. So please remember to do that, and thanks, John.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that should be in. There might be some info and links in the chat, so make sure you check that occasionally. In the meantime, the session that I'm going to do today is an entry-level session. I'm just going to talk about, well, the first half will be very basic, just how to create a new course, sending out a link, inviting students. So I'm going to do that with you. And creating an assignment. And then in Python, I have a Java one later on. So if any of you are AP/CSA teachers and want to learn how to do this in Java, it's really similar. If you can't make the later one, it's very similar. Obviously, syntax is different, but the steps are the same. So going to go through that, and then I'm going to do some unit testing. So that's a way to do auto grading in Coding Rooms, which is a really powerful feature. There's lots of different ways to test student code, and I'm going to show you some of that. So first thing when you go into Coding Rooms is you see all your courses here. I have a few courses. And if you want to create a new one, up in the top right-hand corner, there's a little plus sign. And if you were watching the last session, you saw how to do a new live classroom. If you just want to show students something really quickly, you can just create a workspace, print. You want to show them the print, how the print function works, and then you can just create a workspace like that. So if you're just presenting on a board or something, you don't need to create a whole course. You can just create and run that quickly. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that people can see. All right, so that's my workspace, and then you can just go ahead and delete that later on, or save it, or rename it. You can organize your workspaces so that if you have a bunch of examples you want to show to students, it makes it really easy. But we're here to create a course, so I'm going to create a new course. There are a couple pre-filled courses if you want to use an intro to Python. Here are some AP/CSA exercises. Those are in Java, but we're going to start from an empty template. So I'm going to call it July 30th. Python. You can have a headline if you'd like. these defaults are fine. Obviously, they have lots of different languages, but we're going to use Python 3. And unless you have some reason to use version 1, there's no reason to change that. Excuse me. So you can have different sections in your course. So for example, in my college courses, there are often multiple sections, and they get the same material, but it just makes it easier for me to grade when I have multiple sections. At the high school level, sometimes what I'll do is add different sections for different levels of expertise. So I might have a few extra assignments for some students, or I might have a little more scaffolding for some students. So you can add sections if you want. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to have a main section, and I'm going to create the course. So that's pretty much it for creating a course. It's a one-page, easy setup. And I can immediately start inviting people. So again, if I had multiple sections, there would be here, or I can add a new section. So I'm going to add people to the main section. I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to paste it into the chat for everybody, so you can all join if you'd like. And then what's going to happen is at the end of this session, anybody that is signed up as a student in this workspace, or sorry, in this class, you will be granted teacher privileges for this class, so that you can then go in and see what I did when I create all my test code. You click that link and you join as a student, you'll be able to see what the student sees. But then after today, you'll be able to go in and see what I saw, everything that's in this video. The catch is that please don't go and change everything once you're a teacher, because it'll change it for everyone. So just make a new course for yourself, and you can copy my code over there. But please don't change it for other teachers who might want to see things. If students already have an account in Coding Rooms, you can use this code here to just have them join. It's the same as the end of the URL. And again, you have the option to have it open for a while. You can close it after, a week or whatever, and so on. All right, so you can then see, hopefully some people have, wow, a lot of people have joined already. Okay, so I can see the roster. Again, you can have live classrooms within a course. So if you didn't get a chance to see the previous session, I'm not going to go over live classrooms. We don't have time for that right now, but it's one of the best features of Coding Rooms, and definitely worth checking out. And finally, there are assignments. So if you're going to give assignments to your students, this is how you're going to do it. So you can create an assignment from the assignments page here, just by clicking the create new assignment. I'm going to call it basic Python. And so what it has done for me is it's created a few different things about this new assignment. The prompt here is sort of a general information type of block, and you can see that you can add formatting. So if you want to have pictures, if you want to have code, if you want to have bold, italics, bulleted lists of instructions, all these kinds of things are available to you. What I'm actually going to do is, in the interest of time, I'm just going to copy over an assignment that I have created for this class. So, excuse me, the assignment that all you students are going to do today, you're going to create a multiply function, a divide function, and an is even function. So this is my assignment for you today. I am going to go into the Assign tab. And you can see here, if I had multiple sections, I could choose which ones I want to assign it to and which ones I don't. So again, if you have, some more advanced kids and you want to give them some more challenging assignments, you don't have to give them to everybody. You can give them to specific sections, or however you want to do it. Some of the nice features, you don't have to publish right away. So if you are going to create an assignment or create all your assignments, but you don't want students to see them until you're done, you don't have to publish them. I'm going to publish it. You can decide to publish later. So if you have one assignment a week and you are a much better prepared and organized teacher than I am, and can get them all done before your class starts, great. You can set a time to release them. So let's pretend that I'm really organized and I want to release this on September 10th because that's when this is going to happen. I can do that easily. But right now I'm going to release it immediately so that everyone in the class can see it. And I'm going to say it's due, well, let's say Monday at 9 o'clock a.m. And if you would like, there is a prevent late submissions. So you can stop students from even being allowed to submit things. So if they submit after the due date, that's fine. They can still do that, but they cannot submit after this date if I choose to have a maybe give them a week's grace period. So August 9th is going to be the hard deadline. They cannot submit anything after that. So that's all set up now. So if I want to see what the students can see, there's a student preview. Of course, there's nothing really in the assignment yet except for the instructions. So not much to see there. And of course, there are no gradebook entries yet, unless some of you have gone ahead and already finished the assignment. But what I would like to do before you go ahead and try and do the assignment is show you the template. So this is the default template for all Python assignments, but instead of printing hello world, I again came up with a nice little template here. And what this does is it allows you to give some code to your students in advance. So say you're having them, learn about the print function. It's their first week, and they don't know anything about functions or anything like that. So you want to make sure that they have enough code to get them started, but not confuse them. You can put in comments. You can add a whole bunch of code in here that they will automatically get when they start their assignments. So I added a multiply stub, a divide stub, and an is even stub, because these are the three functions that they have to fill in, and a little bit of instruction on how to fill it in. I also added a few print functions at the bottom, because that allows them to test on their own before they submit. Right. So if you run it right now, obviously these functions don't do anything, so they just return none. But you can see that if they were to fill it out properly, it would print out multiply 4 times 5 equals whatever that returns, 20. So they can play with this, and that's nice. They can add more test cases, they can change the test cases. It's just a way for them to learn how to test their code on their own. In another session, we'll also be going over how to include libraries of code for them to use that they can't see, both in Java and Python. Yes, there are ways to decompile things like jar files, but if you need to include more complicated code that you don't want them to see, for example, the solution to part 1 is required for part 2. You can include in part 2 in a compiled version of part 1. But again, that's beyond the scope of this session, but that is also possible if you want to add your own libraries that the students can use, but not necessarily see. So here's the template. This is what students are going to see. I am going to go ahead and, oops, I love that about coding rooms. If I change my tab without saving, it reminds me to save it so I don't lose my work. So this is a tab only in the teacher side, the model solution, so they can't, students can't see it. So I'm going to create the model solution. It creates a copy of the template and allows me to fill in the functions here. So if I remember correctly, multiplication goes like that. Whoops. Division looks like that, and is even looks like that. So this is going to return true or false depending on whether the remainder of what they pass in divided by 2 equals 0. So if it's an even number, it will return true, and if it's not, it will return false. So again, I can run this, and it will show me now what I've done. So I can go ahead and test. This is what the students presumably would do, is even 4. Should now return true. Divide 90 by 9. Oops, got to change both of them. Returns 10, and so on. I'm gonna get to that actually about the integer and float. That's exactly why I have multiply and divide here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. Good, very good question, and that's where I'm going to get to next. Are there any other questions about either the template, the assignment, the overview, or the model solution? Line 11. No, I actually encourage them to edit things below this line because they need to learn how to test their own code. The student never sees the model solution. So if you want a student to see that, what I do is in class, once the assignment is due, I will post model solutions, but they do not see them. There's no way for them to see them through the Coding Rooms app. Okay, so good question. I opened the assignment and did not see it. So you might have opened the assignment before I pasted the template in. So if I go into the student preview and I open the workspace, you should see the template here. If, for example, you opened it too early, or you have multiply and you did a whole bunch of stuff and it's just terrible code and you don't remember what it started out with, you can click this red circle arrow here and it will reset everything you've done. Okay. Well, is
Reset at
supposed
the
to
top,
reset everything you've done back to the template. So that should.
It's just the reset at the top, John.
What was that?
Up at the top next to
Oh, the
run
reset at
tests.
the top,
Yeah,
right?
that
Sorry.
one. Yep, that one is what you.
Oh, the bottom one is just resetting the console. My bad. Right. Sorry. So if I did that again, I just pressed the wrong reset button. There we go. So now it resets it back to the original template. Yeah. Is there a way for students to ask questions regarding the assignment? I'm not sure how you mean that. Yes, you can have live classrooms. So the way that students will know if automated tests are available are with the submit button, which we'll get to once I go ahead and create some tests. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create some tests. So get out of the student workspace and I'm going to click on test bench here. So there's a couple different things you can do in terms of tests. When you click add a test case, the default at first is input output comparison. Then there are unit tests. And then there are manual tests. So manual test is you as a teacher going in and marking it correct or not. So I'm not going to show that. Input output basically is a way for you to compare a print statement that they have done to some amount of text. So for example, your first assignment might be print hello world. And you want to compare and you want to make sure they do it. So you could do input output comparison. You could, add in an input where they don't have to say hello world. They have to say, please enter your name and then print hello, whatever they typed in. So that would be like an input output comparison. After very basic test cases, those get very annoying for students because grammar, punctuation, those kinds of things, white spaces, they're hard to manage. You can do it, but it's not my favorite way of testing. In general and in industry, people use unit tests. And what that allows you to do is call specific functions and compare return values. So we are going to do unit testing. We're going to test the multiply function. And so, excuse me, this is what the test case looks like. Has a title. Yes, there is unit testing with JavaScript. We'll do that later this afternoon in a session. You can assign a certain number of points for the gradebook. This is the feedback feature. So for example, for this test, I might say multiply 4 and 5 should return 20, right? And this is the template code that they give you. So you can have some setup code here. You can have some teardown code afterwards if you need it. But this is what we're really interested in here is the default test case. You can rename this if you want. I don't usually to something that is more specific to multiply, but I'm just going to leave it as default test case. So I'm just going to copy my code from here. And the one thing you have to remember is that your test has to import the code that you or the student wrote. So if you look in the template or the model solution, the file where all these functions are is called main. If you add other files, you might need to import those as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say from main import multiply. So all that's doing is going to the file main.py and importing the multiply function. And that way, down here, I can assert equals what my expected value is and what the student filled in. So this multiply right here is the same multiply that got imported from that main file that the student filled in. So again, I had to import the main file, specifically the multiply function, and then I can just use that function in my test. And assert equals expects the real answer to be the first argument. So it'll still work if you put multiply first and 20 second as the second argument, but the way that unit testing works is the expected value is usually supposed to go first. So now if I run this on the template, of course it won't work because the template doesn't have any solution. So if I run it on the template, it will fail. So you can see here that it says assertion 20 does not equal none. And the feedback here is multiply 4 and 5 should return 20. So you can make this feedback a little more descriptive. I try to give them a little more feedback than that. I'm just giving you an example of where you can put some feedback on if it fails. And you can decide, you know, obviously how much feedback you want to give, how many hints you want to give. Please talk about when you use setup and teardown. So setup and teardown might be if you need objects, for example, and you need to create some and fill in some data for testing. I can't think of a real scenario like off the top of my head where you absolutely have to use them. I often do everything in the test method right here. However, and I'll show you one thing you can do as well in a second. Actually, I'll get to that in a second. Testing for Turtle and Pygame is a little bit trickier because typically, right, those are like you're getting mouse clicks and things like that for Pygame. So I'm not sure that this is exactly how you would want to test that. You could still have in Pygame have them set up, you know, specific named functions and test those with unit test. But, you know, running a game and testing like levels and things like that is beyond the scope of this way of doing things. All right, so let's make sure that my model solution actually works. So you can see there's no feedback this time because it actually ran perfectly. So the multiply test here ran perfectly because I'm the best programmer. And the one thing that I wanted to mention is if you want to have more complicated testing, you can certainly do that, right? So you can either add more test cases for multiply, which can help students if you have specific things that you want to test with specific feedback. But you can also do things like, just adding more tests inside of this, right? And so this is still one test case, even though it's testing 3 different things. So in my feedback, I might want to be a little more descriptive here, but you can, but you can see that if I run the tests against my model solution, it will just say 1 test case passed, even though there are 3 different tests being run in this specific case. So again, it's kind of up to you how you want to split up your test cases. If you want, often what I will do is have a very basic one and then more complicated ones with some, random numbers and things like that. So divide gets a little more complicated because, as Bram mentioned, computers don't like to compare floating point numbers. If I assign create an assignment that says calculate a value of pi, right? How do I know if they got it right or got it really, really close, right? There is literally no way for me to tell them, yes, this value is exactly pi, right? Maybe they used a pretty good estimate, but it's not as good as my solution estimate, right? So how do you do that? And so that's exactly why I have this division case here. So this is my division test case. Again, I need to import from main, I need to import my divide function. And then what I'm going to do in this case is use a function called almost equal. So in my multiply, you can see I used assert equals. This is precisely equals. This 20 here has to be exactly 20 there, or the test will fail. Almost equals gives you the option to include a delta. So you can decide how precise your students need to be. For pi, maybe that's, I don't know, 100 digits. Maybe it's 1 digit. It depends on, the level of your students, I imagine. But for 100 divided by 9, I'm thinking if they got the first 4 digits right, they probably got the division thing right. Like, it would be hard to come up with something that's, has this amount of precision, but is the wrong answer. So if I run this, here's my feedback, 100 divided by 9. And I run it on the template, which, remember, returns none. It will fail. Oh, and in this case, it says float and none type, right? Because it can't compare those 2 things. But my feedback is here, 100 divided by 9 should equal 11.1111. If I run it on my model solution, it'll run perfectly. So even though, right, this number right here is not precisely equal to 100 divided by 9, it is within this delta. So my student would get that correct. So whenever you're comparing floating point numbers in any programming language, you generally need to use this almost equals when you're testing. Any questions specifically on the difference between assert equals or almost equals? We will have to test this in what to test with. I mean, it depends on the problem, right? But this is just a simple example. You know, if you want to tell your students exactly what's in the tests, that's fine. I generally tell them, you know, we will be testing things like this, and then I will add some tests that they don't know about so that they can't just, you know, pass the tests without actually doing the code, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I don't really understand your question. 11.11 versus 11.11. Okay. Okay, great. So the last kind of test that I want to show for today is Boolean tests. So as we had, yes, Wendy. So you can actually see character by character exactly what students typed in. And I actually had this issue, unfortunately, this school year with one of my college students who spent a couple days typing, and then all of a sudden it turned into a perfect solution that worked on all test cases. Claimed that he did not copy from another student, and when I showed him that, he was quiet. So yes, you can actually see exactly what students have done over the course of their programming. All right. So I'm going to add one more test case for is even. It's again going to be a unit test. And this time we are actually going to use the assert true that is useful here. So again, I have to import the function I want to test. And in this case, I just want to assert is even or is true. All right. So if I run this against, and again, is even or should return true. So if I run it on the template, which is blank, it will give me a none type error again. But it will print out this feedback, so you can see that is even here. None is not true. Is even for should return true. So that tells my students, okay, if I run it on the model solution, it should, all the tests should pass. So one thing to note is that all the tests actually run simultaneously in different threads. So you're not guaranteed to have them in a specific order. That's gonna come out in a future version. But for right now, all the tests in this test suite are run simultaneously on the code. So it doesn't matter what order they are in here. But that is soon going to be organized. All right, so I'm assuming that some of the excited students in this class have actually gone ahead and filled in the solutions. So if I go into my gradebook now, look at Francis. He has submitted his program and gotten 100% on all the tests. So I can actually see his code by clicking right here on this little code icon. And I can see this is Francis's code. So he returned a times b, a divided by b, and if the remainder of a and 2 is 0, return true, else return false. And if I make this a bit, if you click this button up here, you can see it says playback. So now I can see exactly what Francis did, step by step. So if I go all the way back to the beginning, you can see the 3 passes here. And if I go a little bit forward, right, I can even click forwards and backwards using the arrows. Right, so you can see that he had a little typo. He's probably used to a different language. Like that. And you can submit as many times as you want, right? So if you click submit, it says it'll run the auto grading tests. So I click submit, and this is what the student would see when they click submit. So score is 100%. It does it based on the number of points that I assign to each assignment at the beginning. So I want to leave Francis's workspace, and it takes me back to coding room. So I want to go back to my gradebook. And you can see here exactly what people have done with the assignment. Because there's only one assignment, right? That's all it shows. But you can see, for example, in my Python challenges, right, there are lots of assignments here, and it shows exactly like a spreadsheet. And I can even download either the CSV or the JSON file. And I can actually export different versions. So I go into my gradebook. Yep, quite a few people have aced this assignment. So that is how you create a classroom and an assignment, and do the auto grading. So again, you can do input output. You can do manual grading. So if you have different kinds of assignments, this was just designed to be a very basic way to show off the features and the 3 specific kinds of tests: exactly equals, almost equals, and Boolean. View student submissions quickly without going back to the workspace and gradebook. So if I go into Francis, right, then yeah, I can just go back to the gradebook. Manual grading. Okay, let's go ahead and create a new assignment. Oh, and you can also put things in modules if you want. I haven't done that, but second assignment. We've only got a couple minutes. So let's go ahead and test bench, test case for manual. Okay, so that's the issue. The gradebook, seeing the gradebook is a paid feature. What problems with auto grading have I encountered with my course? Not a lot, honestly. There's some cool things you can do in terms of automatically creating test cases. For example, you can do things like adding a solution, right? So if you have a really complex problem and you don't want to type in all your test cases, you can write your solution inside the test case itself, copy and paste it from your model solution, and then you assert equals self.solution with whatever the student did. Yeah, Karina and so I just clicked the back button and it got me back to. Yes, if the test case gives him zeros, he gets 0. I would say the downside to auto grading is relying too much on it. So you can, assume that everybody is getting it right if they have 100%. But as we all know, copying code is really easy. And the flip side of that is kind of related to your question. Students can get frustrated if their code's not working and they have 0%. They might have a typo. They might have the division backwards or something. So you still need to go around and see where students are at. The nice thing about the gradebook, though, right, is that, oops, that's the wrong one. Right. The nice thing about the gradebook is I can see here that Mr. Roberts hasn't even started. He hasn't submitted even a single assignment. So I can just go over to Mr. Roberts and say, hey, I noticed you haven't made any submissions yet. What's going on? So I would say the only problem with auto grading is assuming that it's gonna, solve all your problems. It doesn't. It's a tool that is very useful. And I think it gives you more insight into, where students are at. But you still need to go and, make sure that students are getting what you want them to get out of it. Sorry, the chats are coming really, really quickly. So I might have missed a couple of questions, but.
Anyone can feel free to raise their hand and then unmute, especially for these complex questions.
Yeah. Can you override the auto grader? No, you cannot just go in and type a grade. When they submit, they get a grade that gets posted in the gradebook.
You actually can override it now, John.
Oh, you can now? Oh.
Yeah, if you go into an assignment.
Yep.
And click on somebody's work. Let's say Mr. Lowe didn't do as he cheated. You can click on submission test runs.
On the left-hand side.
Yeah, and you can open up that last one and you can change it.
There we go. So you can change it now.
Question?
Yep.
Yeah, my question is this, since the unit testing is very sophisticated, it looks like it takes a lot of time to evolve. Can I copy, like from a previous course, one of your other course as a model and just evolve that from one semester to the next semester? Maybe the first semester I don't have any unit testing. I just put a little note saying your answer for multiply 4, 5 should be 25. So they had to kind of like self look at it. Of course, I had to manually check to see if it's actually doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you can copy classrooms and you know, make a copy of it and just edit it for new years. That's absolutely possible.
Okay, thank you.
All assignments persist inside that course. So when you go to create a new section the next year, something like that, it's still there and you can continue to add unit tests, update the prompts, and it all updates for all the students in all the sections you have published, including new ones when you create them the next year, stuff like that. So your one course, you can continue to build on it as long as you want.
Just to address Karina's and David's question about kind of the usability of the platform when grading, we do realize that it may take a few more clicks to go through student by student, and our engineering team is actually working on optimizing that workflow. But I think as of today, John did mention that you can also use the back button to get through students much more quickly. So hopefully that's a helpful tip for that.
Hey, and so yeah, I've been using that. Just sometimes it gets just lots of clicks. And so when I'm trying to write more unit tests, but I still have some that, you know, especially when I'm grading graphics and having to, you know, go in and check code and check their output and stuff, it just still is lots of clicks. So
Yeah. We'll be definitely hear you on that, Karina. Thanks for pointing that out too. And
thank you.
I'll put it in a priority for the engineering team.
All right. Thanks.
No problem.
Hi, this is Usha. I wanted to know if I could write some checks for a good coding practices, like making sure that they have comments where they need to be. Can we add some automated tests for those?
So that is more like text processing rather than functionality. That would actually be a pretty tricky problem, especially since, you know, they could just add a comment with just nonsense in it and it wouldn't, you know, it would be impossible for an algorithm to decide whether a comment was actually a good comment or just nonsense. So those kinds of things, typically, you're going to have to visually grade yourself.
Yeah, on my site, I have a little example for Python specifically. If you want to check that the student's code has something in it, just by parsing their entire file. But as John said, the quality of that, you know, isn't necessarily tested. So those things you always still want to review.
That being said, for a lot of things like that, I actually have students grade each other because not only does it save me a lot of time, but it forces the student doing the grading. I mean, I provide a rubric, obviously, but it forces the student who's doing the grading to critically think about code that is not theirs, right? They have to learn how to read code and learn how to read comments and look at the, you know, indenting and all those things, all those types of things, and, you know, and be able to explain why this comment is a good comment or a bad comment. So I actually think that is a pretty valuable exercise.
That's a very good idea. But so can we actually, once a student submits an assignment, can we assign it to a different student to grade? Or like make a TA, make the other person a TA?
Right. So currently, the assignments are only between individual students and teachers. In the future, that is something that, you know, they're working on creating group assignments and things like that. But right now, what I do is I actually have them just, you know, either come over and look at their, you know, their screen, just look at their code, because it, you know, the level of assignments we're doing, it doesn't take hours and hours. So they just kind of switch seats and look at each other's code and do their grading that way. But yeah, you could share it multiple different ways.
Thank you. So will pair programming or a group project be possible with the coding rooms?
Yes. So if you create a workspace, then you can share it with anybody that is on coding rooms. So there's a share button in the upper right. So if you type their email address of whatever they're using in coding room, then they can both work on it, but you can see there's also different roles, right? So you can have here, I can copy a link here, and everyone can be a viewer without being an editor.
And how does Workspace fit in the courses? Like, is Workspace going to be part of the courses? I'm trying to understand how will these be organized. So when a student goes logs into their course, will they see the workspace that they were working on in the courses, or is that going to be separate?
Yeah.
That's-
So yeah. Sorry,
Go
John.
ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, workspaces are independent project outside that lives outside the course or the live classroom. In the workspace, basically, you know, students can work collaboratively, inviting you as a teacher as well to be in that specific project. So I do see that we had a question previously about, you know, having students work together on a collaborative workspace and then uploading that into an assignment. I think it, you know, Joe, John, correct me if you have seen that happen before, but essentially if you want to assign a specific question or assignment project to a group of students, they can work together in a workspace, and then you'll have them eventually download the file, and then you can re-upload it if you wanted to test it against specific you know, test benches or Autograder. But if it's going to be manually graded, then you can basically just grade it right there in that specific workspace and provide, you know, inline comments or whatnot.
Joe, I just made you the host again. That is all the time that I have. But everyone is welcome to, you know, contact us. As Joe mentioned, we're Coding Rooms is super responsive with any, you know, either bugs or just suggestions or questions. So yeah, you're welcome to contact us anytime.